Hi there, I'm Tricia Morris from Club Scrap, and welcome to the Accordion Hinge Book project. I absolutely adore this unique book structure because it doesn't require any sewing, but it does create the effect of a beautiful sewn book structure. This book has a lot of nice heft to it. This was made with one Club Scrap page kit. This was the Beautiful Noise collection, and I absolutely love how the whole book comes together with the help of the photo mats and the cut-aparts, the ribbons, and the other elements included right in the page kit. So I didn't really need to hunt anything else down. Just grabbed that page kit, followed the instructions, and assembled it with almost no waste after I was finished. I handed the instructions off to Karen, my colleague, and she was able to create this gorgeous book from the Cape Cod remix. The difference between a regular Club Scrap page kit and a special release or a remix is that the remixes don't have pre-cut photo mats, so I have a bonus formula included to help you convert the additional 4 sheets we'll provide in our special edition kits to turn those into photo mats. And that's why I'm choosing the Gone Wild remix today for the kit that we'll use to assemble our book. And that way I can really show you how to utilize those 4 extra sheets of paper in a cool way. Now, I've also got an accordion pocket file. Now, while I don't have special assignments for pockets, I'm still going to use the file to help keep all the parts and pieces organized. For now, I'll set aside all of the ribbon, the embellishments, the bottle caps, these buckles, the washi tape, and the charm. We'll just put those aside for the decorating and embellishing part of the process. There is a supply list included with the instructions, but the number one most important supply that I have on hand is my Fiskars 12-inch guillotine style trimmer. I love this trimmer unit, and it's great for a project like this. It's nice and heavy duty, and these measuring guides really help me get accurate measurements, which will be important for the success of your book. For starters, I need to determine what papers I'm going to be trimming to create the different components of the book. And I've chosen to use just a nice dark color for paper A, 2 sheets. This will become the spine of the book and also a couple of inside pages. So those will be papers A. And then I'm going to use 2 of that caramel color for paper B. And then I got to choose 2 of another color for paper C. How about this really gorgeous orange? So that'll be paper C. Now for D, I need 2 more pieces. I'm going to go ahead and use this gorgeous shade of teal, 2 of those. And just make sure you have 2. For E, I will use 1 of these. And then for F, I'll use the other print. And then I'll grab another one of the first print, that's E and F. That should leave me with 4 papers, and it does. So those will be the last pieces we trim. And now that I have my papers sorted, I'll go back to those brown selections on the top. Now that I have my papers selected, hopefully you do as well. It's just a simple matter of giving every color a letter and following the corresponding instructions. If you want to write that all down, you certainly can. So I'm going to go ahead and just take my first sheet of paper and check the grain direction. For many of you, this will be a review, but I need to make sure that I'm folding the paper eventually in the direction it wants to be folded. In other words, with the grain. So if I hold the paper by an edge, and it's very stiff in this direction. If I hold it by this edge, you see how it dips down very easily. That's the direction I want to place this paper into the trimmer. And you can confirm that by the little illustration in the diagram. You'll see that arrow pointing up and down. So I'll place this in the trimmer, just 1 sheet, and I'll cut at 7. Rotate, and then cut at 11 1/4 and 10. Now set aside this large piece in the accordion pocket file. It's going to be the first inside page of your book. I'm just going to put it horizontally in pocket D so it's out of the way and I can keep it organized. Then I have 2 strips. Eventually these strips could nest together with contrasting colors to form a nice nested decorative piece in your book. So I'll just put those in pocket A, keep them out of the way. And then finally I'll trim this 5x12 horizontally at 9. I'm going to set aside this 9x5 to be scored. This is going to turn out to be one portion of the spine of your book. And then once again, I have this little 3x5. I'm just going to put that in pocket A as well. Now I'm going to check the grain direction of my next piece of brown as well as my first caramel color, and make sure it's dipping easily top to bottom to match the other piece that we trimmed. And we'll start again by trimming at 7. Then rotate and cut at 11 1/4. and 10. Now add this to pocket C with the other 2 pages. Here you have more nestables. Do you see what I mean? So you can nest those or just use them as you wish. And take the 5 by 12, we'll trim horizontally at 9 once again. Here we have 2 additional pieces that will become the spine, and then a little 3 by 5 scraps, we'll add those to pocket A. Now that completes the trimming for the first sketch in our instructions. So that's A, and B. And that was the brown, brown, and caramel. And I'm continuing on with paper B, which is another caramel, 2 C's, 2 D's, and E, which is a print. We have 6 papers to be trimmed. I will trim them 2 at a time. Now, if you don't feel comfortable trimming 2 at a time, that's okay. Just do it one at a time, not a big deal. Check your grain direction, and this whole process, every piece goes in with the grain dipping easily top to bottom. The cut's pretty easy here. We'll trim at 11 and 7. Rotate and cut at 11 and 10. File these 2 pieces into the pocket file. And you do have some 1x7s that are going to play a very important role in our book. Next, take a 4 by 12 and trim horizontally at 6. Stack up those 4 by 6s. Let's put those in pocket B. And then this you can just set aside and use later for embellishing. Next, I'll take another paper C and then one of my D's, check for grain, stack those neatly. We'll cut at the same time if you're comfortable, and start at 11 and 7. Rotate 11 and 10. We have 2 more pages for our book, pocket D, if you're using the pocket system. And then we do have more 1x7s. Those are going to be so important. Then we're going to take this 4 by 12. We'll just cut these pieces in half. These will grow up to become little mats for our book. So trim horizontally at 6. I'm just filing these in pocket B. These are my imposed pocket filing spots, so don't worry about it. And then the 1 by 12 you can use later if you want. Finally, at last, we'll still check our grain direction here there we go, that's nice. And one last pair to trim that same way. So we're cutting at 11 and 7. Then rotate and cut at 11 and 10. 2 more of the 10 pages we're making. A bunch more of the 1x7s, and a piece we can cut in half at 6 inches. I'm going to put these with the others that I've trimmed and set these aside with the scraps. Now we're moving on to a different trimming formula, and we're just going to do this with 1 sheet. I'm going to check my grain direction once again, making sure it dips easily top to bottom. I'll cut at 11 3/4 and 7. Rotate and cut at 10. 1 more page. This is just a scrap. And then we're going to cut this in a series of different numbers here. So we will cut this at 9 1/4, 6 1/2, and 3 3/4. And that gives me 1 larger piece and 3 smaller pieces. Now earlier we trimmed some pieces out of our papers that are just a little bit larger than the ones we recently created. So these are going to be designed to nest together, and this is going to just go solo, okay? Now we have 2 more pieces, 2 more prints to trim. Let's see. You know, sometimes you can kind of look at the document to try to figure out what the orientation of the paper could be. What would that look like if a certain area was cut in that certain way? In this case, I just don't think it really matters all that much. I'm just going to go this route. Both prints are going to be trimmed the same way, and I'm going to do it once again at the same time. So we'll start out at 11 1/2 inches. and 6 3/4. I should say that this paper won't be folded, so the grain direction doesn't matter. So again, that's 6 3/4. And then rotate. I'll have you cut at 9 1/2 and 4 3/4. Okay, so let's take the 4 that are the same. I'm going to gather those up and put them in pocket C so they're out of the way. These 2 pieces, let's do something fun with these and trim them horizontally at 6 1/2 and 3 1/4. I'll put these in front with these other smaller mats. Pocket A. Then I'll take this last piece and we'll trim this horizontally at 5 1/4, and then rotate that 5 1/4 inch piece you just created so it's now vertical and cut at 3 1/4. Once again, these are designed to fit with those corresponding pieces, and these can be scraps. This larger piece goes in with the others in pocket C if you would like, and then these can be used for decor later on if you choose. Plus you do have 2 official really teeny tiny scraps that I'm going to dispose of. And now the fun part. If you're using a page kit, you already have a set of 12 pre-cut photo mats. Those are measuring 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 these days. If you don't have that and you have 4 extra 12 by 12 sheets of paper, follow along with me and do this trimming, otherwise fast forward. So because we're trimming from 12 by 12s, I can get 3 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 out of the sheet, plus a whole bunch of other fun stuff to use. So let's cut this at 10 1/2. Grain direction does not matter. And 6 1/4. Rotate and cut at 8 1/2 and 4 1/4. So if you gather up these 2 sets of rectangles, those should all be the same size, and then you're left with this smaller pair. It's a rectangular shape, 3 1/2 by 6 1/4. We'll cut horizontally at 5 1/2 and 2 3/4. Gives us some smaller rectangles and then some scraps. Next, you have this long piece. We'll trim this horizontally at 6 1/4. And that gives us our other 2 mats that should match the others we made earlier, plus a larger scrap. So I'm just going to kind of keep some more piles. Here we have some strips. If you want, you can cut this at 7. These will go nice with our other nestable strips. If you notice, those will nest together beautifully. And we do have some 5-inch strips. Those are all optional decor. Even this little narrow strip from the scrap earlier will work. We're going to repeat that with the ivory and this green tone. And again, no matter what kit you're using, the 4 extra sheets, this is the treatment you give them. So 10 1/2, 6 1/4, then rotate and trim at 8 1/2 and 4 1/4. And there we have 2 more sets of photo mats. And then you have a little rectangle. We'll once again cut at 5 1/2 and 2 3/4. Got 4 more rectangles, 2 more little scraps. Take the 4 1/4 by 12. We'll trim this at 6 1/4. And that completes all 12 of the photo mats that we needed for our book. Plus we have these other not quite 6 1/4 inches long. And if you have this 1 1/2 by 12 strip, you can trim that horizontally at 7. Got some more nestables to add color, plus the shorties. That's all the trimming that's required. So I'm going to set aside my trimmer and grab my score pal. I'm returning back to step 1 where the scoring instructions will be listed, but if you just follow along with me, you'll do just fine. We do have the 3 pieces of paper that are measured 5 by 9 that we need to score in a very special way. Okay, so here are the very important scoring numbers. This is positioned in here horizontally, so the 9 is at the top here. And we'll score at 1 1/8. So you have to be using a score pal that has eighths on it. And the 1 1/8 is halfway between 1 and 1 1/4. So that's 1 1/8. Then 3 3/8. So 3 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. Just count those little channels. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 5/8. and then 7 7/8, so that's one little channel before the 8. Wow, that's weird, isn't it? Now flip the paper bottom to top, and we're going to score again at easier numbers: 2 1/4, 4 1/2, 6 3/4. Much easier. But what we just did is created a score line every 1 1/8 inch. And sometimes that can be hard to do if you're just accordion folding. You wouldn't need those measurements, but this is going to prepare the way for some really beautiful accordion folded spines, okay? We repeat that 2 more times so you get practice, okay? 1 1/8, 3 3/8, 5 5/8, 7 7/8. Flip bottom to top, score in between at 2 1/4, 4 1/2, 6 3/4. I'll repeat that again for the final piece: 1 1/8, 3 3/8, 5 5/8, 7 7/8. Flip bottom to top, score in between at 2 1/4, 4 1/2, 6 3/4. Done. Now I have everything I need for my spines. I'm going to just, while I have the score pal, I'm taking the 7 by 10 pages that I'd put aside in pocket D if you're using that. Otherwise, just, you know, the pages that are on your piles or however you have them organized. And since they're cut with the grain, I'm not going to score them. I'm just going to go ahead and fold them, but I'm going to use my score pal as a little jig to help me get my corners lined up nice and neat. So I'll place the paper into the score pal. In this case, I'm going to do it with the print side facing out on the fold. Make sure the corners are lined up and use my fingertips to just make a crease. Set that aside and then repeat again. And you can see how a score pal, even if you're not using it to score, can really help you make quick, efficient work of making folded pages. And if you're making a book that has a lot of pages, this can be a huge time saver. This book only has 10 pages. It's not so bad, but I do think that the score pal helps my folds be much more accurate. I'll set my score pal aside, and now I'll take a bone folder and just simply stack all those pages that I finger folded and run my burnishing tool over the crease to make the crease a little bit sharper. Look how much of a time saver that was. If you've been folding all of your, burnishing all of your scores one at a time, this will be a big time saver as well. Just stack and burnish. Speaking of folds, this needs to be accordion folded or fan folded. And one of the things I discovered is that a great place to start is by folding in the center. So if you find the center score line and look for it to be a bump, if there's a divot on that side of the score, flip the paper over so there's a bump facing up at the center and then fold in half. This time, just really make sure you get that fold as accurate as you can. If you want to burnish, you can as well. Now from there, I have this bump of the score, so I always want to bury that bump inside the fold, which I will do just on one layer here. And then I'm going to fold back because I have another bump there. Fold forward, I have another bump there. Flip, fold forward to bury the bump, fold back to bury the bump, fold forward to bury the bump. And once again, I can do a single stack and then a single burnish to make a beautiful accordion. So always remember the anatomy of a score line, there is a bump that goes on the inside of the fold. So here's the center bump. I'll start by folding this in half. The reason we flipped that paper bottom to top when we were scoring was so that our bumps would alternate, just like our folds. So here we go. I'm going to bury that bump and then fold back and fold forward. Isn't that great? Fold forward, fold back, fold forward. And that gives you this absolutely gorgeous accordion. So nice. Well, just one more time. So here's my bump, fold in half. And then I'm going to alternate going, burying the bump, forward, back, forward, flip, forward, back, forward, and burnish. And I have beautiful, evenly spaced, exactly 1/8 inch apart accordions. You could also just do that without scoring. Just fold in half again, fold in half again. But I have found with students, this is just a little bit of an easier approach. Next, we'll need to string these pieces together. I'm going to be using Club Scrap's bookbinding glue and a needle-tipped applicator to adhere these spines to one another. So what you would do is basically arrange your first, the spine that has two colors. I'm going to put a color in each side like bookends. So start out with a valley fold on the far left. So here's a free edge. You got a couple of mountains. Then this one, you're going to put that free edge down into the neighboring valley. And the same thing here. This free edge will be glued down into this neighboring valley. And that will make a long, attractive accordion. So I'm just going to remove this for a second, isolate my little free edge here. I'll add some bookbinding glue to it. It doesn't take much. And then I'm going to drop this, the last pleat or the last fold of that accordion gets nested inside to combine them. I'll just burnish that a little bit, and now they're well connected. Okay, then I'm going to do the same on this side. I'm going to isolate this fold because it's going to be married up with this one. I hope that makes sense to you. Keep flipping your accordions around until you can dry fit them together as you've seen them, and then just nestle that right in there. Beautiful. Let's set aside your accordion spine to dry a little bit and grab a cutting mat, a craft knife, and a ruler. And I don't put my logo on many things, but the things I use the most I like to have a Club Scrap version of. So I've got a Club Scrap craft knife, a cutting mat, and a ruler because I use these tools all the time. And I'm going to take one of the prepared inside pages that we folded. I'm going to open it back up again and place the ruler onto the page. I've got the 0 up here on the top, and the ruler is positioned right over the fold line. And what I want to do is cut along the score line, starting a little bit less than an inch to a little bit more than the 6-inch mark. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so a little before the 1 inch starts and a little after the 6-inch measurement ends. That means my slit is going, I have 1 inch from the top intact and 1 inch from the bottom intact, and then the slit I'm making is in the middle. Okay, I'm going to open the next page. I'll position my ruler right onto the fold line as much as possible, and start slightly before the 1, end slightly after the 6-inch mark. Once again, I've created another slit with 1 inch on either side. Of course, as is true for most books like this, you will repeat that project until all 10 pages have that same slot in them. If you're a craft knife and cutting mat novice, just one little tip here. I'm using the edge of my cutting mat to find my 0, and then I can see my 5-inch mark right on the grid of my cutting mat. That's why you want to have a grid on your cutting mat. And then I can also find my 7-inch mark here at the bottom where I can see the best. Always hold your craft knife close to the blade like you would a pencil. Never hold it like this. Always hold it like this. It's like a pen knife. If you're using a utility knife, that might be a little different, but those are some of my craft knife tips. Now I have all of these have been slit. I still have a 1-inch piece and portion of that intact. So I'll set aside all these tools so I have some more working space. And now we have the very, very fun part of assembly. You're gonna love this. So step 1 would be to place your spine in front of you so that you have what I would call the free edge on the left and the right, and then you have a pleat. Okay, so this is a pleat, a free edge, and you have a whole bunch of pleats. In fact, you have 10 of them, and you have 10 pages. You'll also want to determine what color you want to start and end with. So like I have two of most of these colors. So if you wanted to distribute them in such a way to determine how you would like this all to work. So I'm going to start to get like what I think is an attractive order. I might start with a brown to match my spine, and then caramel, maybe a print, a teal, the orange, and maybe I'll go back the other direction so that I start and end with a brown to match my spine. You could have contrast with that, however you want to do it. It's really completely up to you. With my pages in order, my spine in front of me with the free edges facing up, I'm going to take this first piece and find that little slot, and I'm going to thread that onto that very first pleat of my accordion. So just slide it on there like that. If you want, you can close it, and you'll repeat that for the very next one. So I'm going to slide this right onto the page and close it. Grab my next page, slide it on to the next pleats. So there should be one pleat for every page. Now the reason I had you cut into your pages, this is basically a 5-inch slit, but remember how I said start your slit slightly before the 1 and end it slightly after the 6. What that does is just gives you a little breathing room in order to be able to slide these onto the pleats a little more easily. I hope that makes sense as well. Like once you start to do it, you'll understand, like, oh yeah, I didn't really get that, but now I understand why you want to have a pleat just slightly larger than 5 inches, because this is exactly 5 inches. Now I'm back to this. You see how fast this is coming together? Just imagine if you were sewing each individual page with needle and thread, you'd be spending a lot more time on this. And that's what I love. It's just so efficient, and it's so clever, and it's going to get even more clever. You're going to be like, oh, who thought of this? Well, certainly not me. I didn't come up with this structure. All I did was just come up with a way to do it very, very, very efficiently. And here I've reached the end of my 10-page assembly. Now I'm just going to kind of straighten this out here. And it's not stitched, but how can we hold these pages onto the spine that these pleats? Well, that's where those 1-inch strips come in. And this is absolutely optional, but if you happen to have a corner chomper, I like to use the 1/2-inch setting to trim the corners on one of the long edges, both the top and bottom corners on one long edge. Then you can take that piece, slide it through that spine, and that's going to help secure this to the book more permanently. We'll make it even more permanent in a little bit. So I'm going to take that other print, so you can decide how you want to distribute these, round those corners, and thread it in. And since we've scored that spine at 1 1/8, it really comes together nicely. So now I'm going to do the caramel. I'll just keep rounding the corners and keep adding them until all of the 1x7 strips have been installed into the book. Now every single pleat of the spine has the 1x7 strip in there to hold it in place. And I do have 2 strips left over, so you can put those on your embellishing pile. And now all that's left to be done is the decorating. You can really finish things off though by getting the outer 1x5 flaps glued into place. So I'll just apply adhesive to that and fold it down, flip the book over, and repeat. And right now the book doesn't really have a top or a bottom, so you can sort of page through, check your print to determine how you want that page to appear in the book. Maybe this would be the front and then other print. Just make sure you've got things assembled the way you want them. And then you have this whole mess of other pieces, and I'm going to show you the roles that they play in the book. So remember we had our stack of photo mats, or if you had the regular monthly Club Scrap page kit attached to a month and year, you will have 12 of these photo mats. And then the fun part is, I think I'd filed them in pocket B or C. You have a series of mats that will nest perfectly, so that these are smaller than these by just that 1/8 inch reveal on all 4 sides. So these become partners with the larger photo mats to really decorate the book. You also have some larger pieces of the print. That's also strategic, so that you can use maybe this one to be on the front of the book. Perhaps you want this piece to go on the back of the book. You can also maybe add one to the inside cover to kind of stabilize that a little bit. And then you could add another one to the inner back cover. Plus you still have another one that you can use, maybe, or two more actually, to decorate some of the pages that are more plain or just lack, maybe they just need a little oomph. So that would be where you would install those printed panels, and they should fit perfectly into the book with an 1/8 of an inch margin on all 4 sides. Then you have these smaller rectangles that came only if you had a special edition kit where you had to trim the photo mats. And these, I don't believe, have a partner. There might be one. No, that is not a partner. But then I showed you too how these little guys nest up, plus you have 2 extras, and you have some smaller little rectangles. Those just might, and they do, nest onto these other smaller rectangles that we trimmed. You can kind of try to find your best combos there. You'll still have a few extra. Look at all of this content that you have to decorate your book with. It's so fun. Plus you have these strips. These 7-inch strips make really nice, like in the book you can add them to add more color or contrast. So like on the inside of this page, maybe you'd want to add one of these and then nest it with one of these just to give you some anchoring. There are countless ways you can decorate the book, but the best part is that our page kits and special edition kits come with these designed cut-aparts. So you can follow the little gray colored guidelines on your cut-aparts, they all have them, and trim your cut-aparts into individual pieces of artwork, which then you can add to the book. I do recommend that you try to add something to this area between the binding strip and the pleat. For example, I could add this nested mat to this area right here so that it crosses over from the pleat into the binding strip. By attaching this piece here, it will prevent the binding strip from sliding out of the book, and it just gives it a lot more stability. Once I trim all of these pieces and retrofit them to go into the book, plus add all my mats, this is going to be a gorgeous specimen. So what I'm going to do now is, since it's late in the day, I'm going to go home, and when I get back in the morning with fresh creative spirit, I will decorate my little book, and I'll come back and show you how it turned out, and we'll review the other finished samples. Hi again, I'm back at Club Scrap with my finished Gone Wild accordion hinge book. I absolutely love how it turned out. It took me about an hour to add all the little details, and they include a fully decorated front cover using the flattened bottle caps and the epoxy stickers and cut-aparts from the collection. And our special edition kits and page kits typically have cut-aparts that are designed to fit onto 12 by 12 pages. So in a case like this, I just took the long, narrow cut apart, I trimmed it into sections, and created a graffiti style word collage on the left side of this page. And here I took some of the trimmed pieces I was able to mat because I was using a special edition collection, and I just made sure that I attached them crossing over into the tab as well as the pleat, and that's going to prevent that tab from scooting out and being able to remove the page. Conversely, if you're working on a book where maybe you'd want to remove the pages, then it's a good idea to leave those tabs free and clear so you can scoot them out, remove the page, maybe decorate or write on it, and then add it back into the book. So you have a lot of flexibility and some great options. Again, you can see how I just created almost a miniature version of a scrapbook layout, and I had so much fun putting it together. I mean, this is my job, but boy, when your job is this, it's just so much fun. Here's another retrofitted horizontal page strip that was started out at 12 inches long. Here I just cut him out and added him. And every page just has something delightful on it as a result of having access to all of those fun cut-aparts and embellishments. And here I kind of ran out of something, but I just was able to take a portion of a scrap and then add it to that little flap. So much fun. And that is the tour of this little book. Now, as a reminder, you can recreate this accordion hinge book with absolutely any page kit or special release designed for pages that we make here at Club Scrap. Again, this was made with August's Beautiful Noise collection, which included photo mats to get the job done, which are really nice to nest with the 4x6s you make from the prints. Karen made this one with Club Scrap's Cape Cod collection, and I just love how it turned out with the embellishments on the front cover. And you'll notice too that she attached her photo mats right to the flap, so you have plenty of real estate for tons of photos from your next adventure. I hope you have a lot of fun making your own accordion hinge book, and I just want to invite you to share it with all of us at the private Club Scrap chat group on Facebook. I hope to see you there.